The moment the loan officer at First Citizens Bank looked up from the transfer form and quietly said, "I need to make one call before we proceed," I felt my son's wife, Yvette, tighten her grip on my arm. That grip told me everything I hadn't let myself believe for 8 months. Before I tell you how I ended up in that chair, can I ask you something? If you believe that getting older should never mean losing control of the life you built, please like this video and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if the person sitting beside you, smiling, was the very person trying to take everything? My story doesn't begin inside that bank. It begins in a 2-bedroom house on Clover Ridge Drive in Decatur, Georgia, where Raymond Whitfield and I spent 41 years building something quiet and real. Raymond carried mail for 38 years, USPS. He was out the door before the sun was up, 6 days a week, through Georgia summers that hit 100 degrees before noon, and January mornings when your fingers went numb inside the gloves. He never complained. Not once. He'd come home smelling like heat and concrete, and he'd say, "Gloria, one more day done." That was it. One more day done. I was a librarian at the Decatur branch for 26 years. Children's section. I watched kids come in who could barely hold a book and leave years later as teenagers with opinions and favorite authors. There were days I loved that job so much I forgot to eat lunch. We weren't wealthy people. We were careful people. Raymond's rule was simple. If it's not in the account, it doesn't come out of the account. We drove old cars until the wheels practically begged us to stop. We spent vacations driving to the Florida Panhandle with sandwiches in a cooler instead of flying anywhere. When the roof needed replacing, Raymond got up there himself 2 weekends in a row. By the time we both retired, we had saved $172,000. Every dollar of it was deliberate. Raymond had a name for that money. He called it our anchor. "You can drift a little," he'd say, "as long as you've got an anchor." He wasn't a man who talked much, but when he did, he meant it. One Sunday morning, 14 months before everything fell apart, Raymond told me his left arm felt strange. I thought maybe he'd slept wrong. By the time the ambulance came, I already knew it was something worse. He survived the first stroke. The second one came 6 days later in the hospital. I held his hand. I talked to him even after the doctors told me he couldn't hear me anymore. I don't know if that was true. I talked to him anyway. Nothing prepares you for the first morning alone. I reached for his side of the bed out of habit. I made 2 cups of coffee. I stood at the counter holding one of them for a long time before I understood why my chest hurt so much. Grief isn't one big moment. It's 100 small ones. His reading glasses on the nightstand. His name still on the utility bill. The way I'd start sentences with Raymond and I, before remembering I was alone in the sentence now. My son Victor came down from Nashville 2 weeks after the funeral. He and his wife Yvette brought food, helped me sort through Raymond's things, sat with me at the kitchen table while I cried over the strangest objects: a pocket calendar, a tube of his hand lotion, a half-finished crossword puzzle. I was grateful. I told myself I was lucky to have them. Yvette was the one who called most often after that. Victor worked long hours. He managed a mid-size landscaping company. And Yvette handled most of the family's day-to-day things. She'd call to check in. She'd drive down from Nashville once or twice a month, bring dinner, sit with me on the porch. I started to feel like maybe losing Raymond didn't mean losing everyone. Then she started asking questions. Small ones at first. Where did I keep my property tax records? Did I have a copy of Raymond's pension paperwork? Was the house still in both our names, or had it transferred to mine alone? She said she was helping me get organized. She said it was what families did. I told myself she was right. Then she asked about my savings account. Just once, casually, over iced tea. She said she wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving money sitting somewhere that wasn't earning interest. She mentioned she knew a financial advisor. She offered to go with me. I said no thank you. She smiled and changed the subject. But I noticed she'd started asking whether I remembered things. Had I forgotten about the neighbor's cookout last week? Had I mislaid my reading glasses again? Had I missed a doctor's appointment? Every question came wrapped in a soft voice and a worried expression. And the thing about hearing someone sound worried about you is that you start to wonder if they have reason to be. 4 months after Raymond passed, Victor called me from Nashville. His voice had that flatness he always gets when something's wrong. The landscaping business had hit a rough patch. A commercial client had pulled a big contract with almost no notice. Victor was short on payroll for the week. He hated to ask, he said. He would pay me back in 60 days, he said. He just needed $18,000. 18,000. I sat down when he said the number. That wasn't a small favor. That was more than 10% of everything Raymond and I had set aside over 4 decades of careful living. I looked at Raymond's old armchair across the room. I thought about what he would have said. I thought about Phoebe and Miles, my grandchildren, 15 and 12, and whether they knew their dad was in trouble. I asked Victor if the bank could help. He said he'd already extended his line of credit. I asked about other options. He said they'd tried. Then Yvette got on the phone. Her voice was soft and steady. Mom, these are your grandchildren's lives we're talking about. I went to the bank the next morning and transferred the money. For 6 weeks, Victor called regularly. Everything felt warm again. Then the calls became less frequent. By the 3rd month, I'd stopped expecting repayment and started pretending I hadn't noticed. Then one afternoon, I called my bank to ask about a statement I hadn't received. The woman on the phone told me that paperless notifications had been enabled on my account 2 weeks prior. I hadn't done that. I told her so. She read me the email address that had been added. I didn't recognize it. I asked her to remove it and reset my preferences. When I hung up, I sat very still at the kitchen table and thought about the fact that Yvette had used my laptop 3 weeks ago. She'd said she needed to print directions. She'd been in the office alone for about 20 minutes. I changed every password I had. It took me almost 2 hours. When I finished, I felt foolish for being frightened. I told myself I was imagining things. I only believed that for about 5 days. Yvette came by the following Saturday. She was lovely, as always. She brought a peach cobbler. After dinner, she sat across from me with her hands folded and said she wanted to talk about something she'd been noticing. She was gentle about it. She said she'd been concerned. She mentioned that I'd asked her the same question twice during our last phone call. She mentioned the glasses. She mentioned a grandchild's birthday. I'd allegedly confused with another date. Then she said she'd been reading about durable power of attorney arrangements, just as a precaution, just in case something changed. I set my fork down. No, I told her. She looked surprised. Then she looked sad. She said she was only trying to protect me. She said Victor was worried. She said it would give the whole family peace of mind. I said no a second time. She left before dessert. The drive home was apparently long enough for Victor to call me. He said Yvette was crying. He said I was being unreasonable. He said they were only trying to help. By the end of the call, I felt like I had done something wrong. And I hadn't done a single thing except refuse to give my daughter-in-law control of my finances. That night, I opened Raymond's old desk drawer. He kept a small notebook in there, grocery lists, phone numbers, notes to himself. At the back, in his handwriting, I found one sentence he'd written and circled twice. Don't let love be the reason you stop asking questions. I read it 3 times. 2 days later, my granddaughter Phoebe called me from her bedroom closet. I could hear her whispering. She told me she'd overheard her parents talking. She said her mother had been on the phone with someone named Dennis Faraday, a name I didn't recognize, asking how quickly an estate could be liquidated after a family member entered memory care. She said her father had tried to leave the room, but Yvette had made him stay and listen. Then, Phoebe said something that stopped my breath completely. She said she'd found papers on her mother's desk. They had my name at the top. One of them looked like a power of attorney. Another one looked like it had my signature on it. But Phoebe said the signature looked wrong. Too neat, too careful. She was 15 years old, calling from her closet, terrified. I told her she had done the right thing. I told her not to say a word. I told her I would handle it. The next morning, I drove to the office of my attorney, Helen Moss. Helen had handled Raymond's estate. She'd known both of us for 12 years. When I walked in and told her everything, from the missing bank's statement to Phoebe's whispered phone call, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Gloria, someone called this office 2 months ago identifying themselves as you. They asked about power of attorney timelines and the process for listing a property if the owner was placed in long-term care." My hands went cold. Helen said. The voice had sounded younger. The receptionist had noted it but hadn't acted on it. Helen helped me file a fraud alert with my bank, contacted a handwriting examiner who confirmed the signature on the document. Phoebe had photographed looked traced rather than signed, and arranged for me to see Dr. Andrea Kwan for a formal cognitive assessment. Dr. Kwan spent 40 minutes with me. Memory recall, pattern recognition, sequential reasoning. When she finished, she smiled. "You're doing exceptionally well, Gloria. There's no indication of any cognitive impairment." I nearly cried in the chair. She printed a signed copy of the evaluation and gave me 2 certified originals. I put one in my purse. The other went to Helen. I carried that letter every single day for the 2 weeks that followed. Then Yvette called and said we needed to go to the bank together. She said Victor's business needed one final bridge transfer to avoid collapse. She said she'd explain everything when we got there. She said it wasn't a big amount. She said my grandchildren were about to lose their home. She did not tell me the amount until we were already sitting across from the branch manager, and she slid the wire transfer form across the desk. $172,000. Every cent I had left. The destination read, Clearwater Meridian Financial Solutions. I said I didn't know that company. Yvette said it was a debt restructuring firm. I said I'd never heard of it. She said there wasn't time to explain everything. She started talking to the branch manager about my memory. Her voice was calm and practiced. She said I sometimes got confused by paperwork. She said the family was doing what was necessary. I reached into my purse. I placed Dr. Kwan's evaluation on the desk. Before anyone could speak, a woman in a dark blazer appeared at the office door. Her name badge read Margaret Chen, Senior Loan-Sum Officer. She apologized for the interruption and asked if she could speak to me privately for a moment. Yvette said that wasn't necessary. Margaret looked directly at me. "Mrs. Whitfield, would you like to step out for a minute?" I stood up. Yvette grabbed my wrist. She was still smiling at the branch manager. "My mother gets anxious," she said. "I think it's better if I stay with her." I pulled my arm free. In the hallway, Margaret told me she had flagged the destination account name, Clearwater Meridian Financial Solutions, 18 months ago, in connection with another customer's complaint. She said the account had been linked to at least 4 suspicious transfers involving older adults over the past 2 years. She said she had already notified the bank's fraud team before coming to find me. She looked at me steadily. "No one is moving your money today." When we returned to the office, 2 men from the bank's fraud department were waiting. They asked Yvette to remain seated. They asked me to confirm I had not authorized the transfer. I confirmed it. They asked me whether I recognized my signature on the power of attorney. I told them I had not signed it. Yvette stood up. Her voice rose. She said I was confused. She said the signature was legitimate. She said the family only had a few hours left. One of the fraud officers asked her, calmly, how she had come to possess a power of attorney signed before a notary if I had not personally appeared at a notary's office. The room went completely still. She didn't answer. Victor, who had been waiting in the car, came inside when no one called him after 30 minutes. He walked into the office and took one look at the fraud officers and sat down without saying a word. By the end of the afternoon, he had answered every question they asked him. He was quiet and pale, and he didn't look at Yvette once. I learned later that Clearwater Meridian Financial Solutions had been under federal investigation for 6 months. Margaret Chen's flag had been the 4th complaint logged against that account. My transfer would have been the 5th. Yvette was arrested 3 weeks later. Victor cooperated with investigators and avoided criminal charges, though he lost his business license pending review. Helen Moss filed a civil complaint that froze any attempt to access my accounts. The forged power of attorney was never used. Every dollar Raymond and I saved was still there. The night after it all ended, I sat on my porch with a glass of sweet tea, and I looked at the yard. Raymond's hydrangeas had come back again that summer. He'd planted them the year we paid off the house. He'd said, "Gloria, those will outlast us both." He was probably right. Phoebe called me that evening, just to check in. She didn't know the whole story yet. She just said she'd been worried about me and wanted to hear my voice. I told her I was fine. I told her she was one of the bravest people I knew. She was quiet for a second, then she laughed a little, embarrassed. "I was just scared," she said. "So was I told her. "That's not the opposite of brave." It has been almost a year since that afternoon at First Citizens Bank. Victor and I have spoken. It's slow going. Trust takes longer to rebuild than anything. But he told me he was sorry, and he said it looking directly at me, not at the floor, and I believed he meant it. That matters. Phoebe started 10th grade this fall. Miles made the travel baseball team. I see them twice a month. We bake, we watch old movies, we talk about ordinary things. Ordinary is a gift I do not take lightly anymore. Margaret Chen sent me a card at Christmas. She retired in November. She wrote, 42 years in banking, and your case is the one I'll carry with me. Take good care of yourself, Mrs. Whitfield. I keep it on the refrigerator, right next to the photograph of Raymond at his retirement party. If you've stayed with me through all of this, I want you to hear one thing clearly. Your savings are not just money, they are time. They are the winters you worked through, the vacations you skipped, the years you said not yet. No one has the right to take that from you. Not a stranger, and not someone who calls you mom. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Call your bank. Call an attorney. Ask questions. Read every paper before you sign it. And if someone in your family keeps telling you that you're confused, that your memory is going, that you can't manage on your own, ask yourself who benefits most from you believing that. Because the easiest way to take someone's independence is to convince them they've already lost it. My name is Gloria Whitfield. I am 67 years old, and I still know exactly who I am. Nobody gets to decide that but me.